This is the Novel Marketing Podcast.
I'm James L. Rubart.
I'm Thomas Umstadt Jr.
And this is the show for novelists who hate marketing but still want to become best-selling authors.
And we are back.
Finally!
After our
back.
long hiatus, we apologize, but now is Season 2 of the Novel Marketing Podcast. We got your emails and your texts and your Facebook requests. And yes, we are not going away. We are here to talk about marketing and to help you become best-selling authors.
And thank you to all of you who have reached out and said, when are you guys going to get new episodes up? Thank you for your patience.
So today we're going to talk about how to market yourself to people who, wait for it, don't like you. So
dun, 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 dun.
This is one of the hard things to realize as a author. In general, people don't care about you. They care about themselves. But occasionally, they do care about you in a way that you don't like. They don't like you. And so how do you market to folks like that?
Well, first of all, Thomas and I like to say that you are marketing yourself in every moment. You are to editors, agents, readers, other authors, by the way you speak, by the way you dress, by your tone of voice, by the things you say, by the things you don't say, how open you are, or how closed off you are. So we are certainly marketing ourselves to everyone around us in every moment. The problem is when you market yourself in such a way that people do not respond to you in the way you hope they would respond. And I'm going to tell a quick story, and then Thomas has an even more poignant story about people not liking you. I was at a conference earlier this year, and there was an editor there that I wanted to meet, just get to know a little bit. And he does nonfiction, and I have a few nonfiction books rolling around in my head, and I just thought it'd be a good contact to have. So I sat down next to him at lunch, and I'd say after about 2 or 3 minutes of trying to make polite conversation, it was clear that this guy just wasn't connecting with me. He wasn't rude, but at one point in the conversation, he just kind of turns away and starts talking to the guy next to him. And I can take a hint and go, you know what? There's just not a connection here. And if I'm really honest, he's probably not a guy I would go hang out with. You know, it was a business situation.
And that's okay.
That's okay. But it kind of stung a little. It's like, well, you know, what's wrong with me? So in this episode, we're going to talk about how do you deal with people like that? How do you make the marketing connection when there really isn't a natural connection with someone else? But Thomas, I think you better tell your, let's say, non-connection story first.
So as those of you who've been listening for a long time know, I wrote a blog post last year in 2014 titled Why Courtship is Fundamentally Flawed. And the post went viral. You know, over 1 million people read it in every country in the world except for North Korea, which I believe blocks my entire blog. So it got a lot of buzz and a lot of negative feedback, a lot of positive feedback. And a lot of folks asked me to write a book, including pastors, blah, blah, blah. We talked all about that. So my book came out a couple of weeks ago, and it launched within 48 hours, I had multiple 1-star reviews and multiple 5-star reviews. And one of the 1-star reviews was so mean, one of my readers was able to get it taken down from Facebook or from Amazon for violating their terms of service. But to this day, the book only has 5-star and 1-star reviews. So,
you know how we've talked about that
yeah.
bell curve that you want?
Yeah, love me, hate me, don't ignore me. I am practicing my own preaching right now. And it is tough to hear because I'm writing to conservative evangelical Christians, particularly in the homeschool community. And that which is what I grew up as and what I still identify as. And those are the folks who are the most hostile. I have gotten very, very mean emails. I had one homeschool mom who was sending me some sort of mean message on Facebook every 20 minutes for an entire day, just in case I was missing her. So like my phone's constantly vibrating or buzzing with new hate or new criticism. And also people who are loving it. And, you know, I've heard from folks who've gotten married now because of the blog post and people who are going on dates for the first time, you know, 26, 27-year-old people who've never been on a date and are now, you know, dating and have hope for marriage that they didn't have before. And it's an interesting challenge that I'm facing because I'm trying to write to the folks I'm trying to reach are these conservative evangelicals who aren't getting married. You know, there's been this collapse in the marriage rate across the country, but particularly within these conservative circles. And what I've had to realize is that not everyone has ears to hear. And that's true regardless of what your message is. There are folks who are going to listen and folks who are not going to listen. And as loud and as angry as the people who don't have ears to hear, you can't give up on your message, and you also can't give up on them, because there's a saying I heard one time that when you throw a stone into a pack of dogs, the one who yelps loudest is the one who got hit. So often the people who are the angriest are the ones who are being most touched by your message, and maybe they don't agree with you at the time, and maybe being angry is how they're working through your ideas. But I found often that the folks you make angry today end up being your allies 4 and 5 years from now as they've worked through their anger.
That's a great point. I sent my first book to be endorsed by a guy, hopefully another author, and he wrote back and said, "I just don't get this. It just does not work for me in any way, shape, or form." And then I sent him my second book. I thought, oh, what the heck, I'm going to try again. He wrote back, "I absolutely love this book." And so sometimes it's they just don't like your book, or they just and that's okay. I am a huge fan of The Princess Bride. And on a email loop I'm part of, somebody raved about this book that was written by Kerry Ewells, the guy who plays Wesley. And so I ordered the book, and I started reading it. I was just captured by it. I loved it because it's behind-the-scenes look. It's comments from the other people who were in the cast, Rob Reiner comments. It's just a wonderfully done book. And so I'm always curious about what people think of a book. So I go to Amazon, and I don't need to read the 5-star reviews. I would give it a 5-star review. I start reading the 1-star reviews, and they're just slamming this book. Oh my gosh, it makes it sound like it was a great experience for everybody. Nothing could be that saccharine, and they're just tearing this book apart. And at first I'm like, are we reading the same book? Are you an idiot? And then I go, no, wait a minute. From where they're coming from, yeah, for them it was too saccharine. And I have to say, well, that's your opinion, and good for you. You're certainly entitled to it. But that helps me when readers just don't get my novels, or when I see people coming after Thomas. And I read Courtship and Crisis, and my opinion is, oh my gosh, this is an incredibly needed book. So I guess the point is, you have to get to a point in your career where you just go, I'm just going to do what I'm called to do, and I'm going to try to ignore the people who don't connect with me.
That's right. And one thing that's really important as you're marketing to people who don't like you is to not respond in kind. And this is really difficult. Trust me, I am there. I got a really long, very angry email and from somebody that I really trusted and respected, and it was difficult. It was difficult to get, to receive and to read that. And the temptation is to be like, oh yeah, well here's the 5 ways where you're wrong, and defend each one of my points that this person attacked. But that isn't going to work. So there's this wonderful parable of the sun and the wind from Aesop. And the wind got all puffed up, and he told the sun, I am more powerful than you. And the sun's like, oh, really? And the wind says, yes, anything you can do, I can do better. So the sun challenges the wind to a contest. He's like, okay, whoever can get the cloak off of this traveler's back is the strongest. And so the wind's like, you're on. So the clouds cover up the sun, and the wind starts to blow, and the rain starts to fall. And the harder the wind blows, the harder the man holds his cloak to his back, until the man finally is bent over, double, hardly moving at all on the road, doing nothing but using every ounce of strength to hold his cloak to his back, until finally the wind blows itself out and says, it cannot be done. There is no way to get this man's cloak off of his back. And the sun's like, all right, well, let me show you a thing or two. So the clouds move away, and the sun comes out, and as the temperature gets warmer and the air gets steamier, the man on his own volition takes the cloak off of his back. And so when you get into a fight with someone and it's bap, 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 you're just trying to blow their cloak off, and their pride is now suddenly on the line, and they're going to just hold their ideas tighter to them. And so as much as you want to respond to those angry comments, and as much as you want to, respond to those angry reviews on Amazon, you really don't need to do that. And another reason not to do it, other than the fact that it doesn't work and only makes people angrier, which then leads to more angry comments. And so it's kind of like the tar baby story, where it's like, Brer Rabbit punches the tar baby one time, and then he's like, give me my hand back, or I'm going to punch you with the other hand. And then he punches him with the other hand and eventually kicks him with both feet. And he's completely trapped now in the tar baby. And that's how interacting with critics on the internet can be. Not only do you not want to do it for that reason, but the other reason you don't want to do it is that if you don't, your fans and your readers will come out and to defend you. So far on my page, on the 1-star reviews, those are the ones with all the comments, as the folks who left 5-star reviews or maybe just enjoyed the book, didn't even leave a review, are defending me. And the most common one is, did you even read the book? Because it came out so fast after the book came out. They're all just kind of shocked that this person said what they said. And so it looks a lot better when your fans are defending you, and it's a lot more effective.
And one of the other things to keep in mind is personality styles. Some of you have studied Myers-Briggs or some of the other personality style programs and information out there. And it becomes apparent very quickly that there are toxic styles. I learned this when I first started studying personality styles back when I was in my early 20s.
So are you saying some people really are trolls?
Yes, some are just simply trolls. But it came clear to me when I realized I am an expressive personality and my dad was an analytical personality. And those styles are what is known as toxic styles. In other words, we think very differently. I'd say, oh, I spent $5 on something, and my dad was, no, you spent $4.97. That neither are wrong. It's simply the way you express your personality. And once I understood that and started adapting to my dad, our relationship improved dramatically. So my point is that it has nothing to do with you sometimes, why they don't like your book. It's simply they're a toxic personality style to yours. And you've had this experience where you walk into a room or a party and you start meeting people and it's like, oh my gosh, I really like them. They're so great. Well, because they're probably similar personality style to you, where that other guy across the room, you go, I don't get him. I'm never going to connect with him. So it has nothing even to do with their attitude. It has to do with the way they're wired.
And also, often the issue is not the issue. So the reason why they're angry may have nothing to do with your book. You're just a convenient outlet. So there's one lady who's been very, very outspoken against me on the internet, and her son got a girl pregnant, and they had a shotgun wedding, and she has been attacking me. And part of me feels like, I wonder if I am basically a stand-in for her son, who she's very frustrated with, who didn't do courtship, even though that this is what their family believed in very strongly. And so, basically, I've taken the place. She doesn't feel like she can attack her own son because, he's making things right and getting married, but she can attack me instead. And so sometimes you have to realize that the issue is not the actual issue. And there's nothing I can do about that. I can't fix that. I can't fix her. And in some ways, I'm very thankful for her because she's been so loud and so persistent. It keeps people thinking about my book and my blog because she just goes on. She's been going on for a year now with various posts. And, she writes more posts about me than I do.
Oh, I love it. Thomas, there's a saying I learned years ago, and it's pretty simple. And it's stuck with me because it is simple, but it's so true. And that is, people treat you the way they feel about themselves.
Yeah.
And that kind of lets you have a little bit more compassion for them. Not that their behavior, if it's trolling, is necessarily, you have to say that's great, but you certainly can say, I get it now. This person deep down probably doesn't have a great life.
And that has definitely been the case. Interacting with real life trolls, people who are trolls on the internet on one issue or another, they're often very lonely, hurt people.
Yeah.
And hurt people. And so you just have to be who you are and don't change yourself to adapt to somebody else's brokenness. Because if you stand strong, eventually they'll come around or they won't. Some of the heroes that I really look up to, people like Jesus or the Apostle Paul, they had folks who really hated them. But Jesus wasn't like, oh, I'm sorry, Pharisees, I'm going to back down now. No, he doubled down. He took a stand for what he stood for. And you know what? Some of those Pharisees were won over eventually. And Paul was one of those Pharisees. His biggest advocate later on, decades later, was one of his biggest opponents, literally killing or participating in the killing of Jesus's followers. And it's tough. When I had one of my folks on my launch team was kicked out of a group of homeschool moms because she recommended my book, and just talking about my book was unacceptable. And so, even my supporters are being persecuted now in some context. And so it's tough to watch that. And, but ultimately that reaction is what is good marketing, people being angry and spreading the word. And it's if you just take a deep breath and realize it's not the end of the world. This person doesn't have control over how I feel. I have control over how I feel. And this person does not define my value. These folks I'm trying to reach, hopefully your heart and marketing your book is trying to help people. Your novel or your nonfiction book is benefiting people in some way. It's got some sort of higher message and meaning. Or maybe it's just entertaining. It's good, clean entertainment. And, after a rough day, they read your book and they, feel a little bit farther away from the troubles in their life. In some way, your book is serving folks. And that's what you have to remind yourself. I'm just trying to serve and bless people. And if people don't want that, that's their problem. Don't let it get you down.
We got to wrap up here, but I want to just emphasize one more time what Thomas is saying, because it's so important. The temptation is to back down when this kind of stuff hits you. And that's where you have to say, nope, my book is needed. I wouldn't have written it if I didn't feel like somebody is going to be entertained or encouraged or inspired. So you don't back down. You stay the course. You keep going with your marketing, keep putting the message out there. And as much as you can, just push out of your mind those readers, those people who will never going to like you. Because the effort you put into getting them to like you, oh my gosh, it's not a good ROI.
There's this great quote I heard sometime. We spend all of our money to impress people we don't like, or we spend money we don't have to impress people we don't like. Something like, I just butchered the quote. I apologize to whoever said the real quote. But if someone doesn't like you, they're not going to like you. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to buy your book. If they get angry enough, they may buy your book. And the more they talk about it, the more other folks they may get to buy your book.
Exactly.
So some final things to remember before we let you go. Remember, you're marketing in every moment. And so you don't want to give your haters or your critics any additional ammunition against you than possible. Which I can tell you, as somebody who's writing a book on relationships, the book's Courtship in Crisis. It's the title. I should probably mention that on a book marketing podcast. I should at least mention the title, courtshipandcrisis.com.
And here's the call to action. Go buy it now.
So that's made my dating life a little bit more complicated to realize I have this, huge horde of people waiting for me to make a mistake so that they can point it out. So if you Google Thomas Umstattd, one of the very first suggested results is Thomas Umstattd Jr. married, because of how many people are searching for that on Google. So I was like, no pressure. But accept the fact that you're not going to connect with everyone. No book resonates with everyone. There is not a single book that everyone read and everyone liked. The most popular book in the world, by far, every year it's the best-selling book, the Bible, also the most controversial. More people hate that book than any other book. And so just realize you're not going to write a more popular book than the Bible, which means you're still going to have haters on your book. And the more successful it is, the more folks are going to not like it.
And then finally, concentrate on what you do have, not on what you don't. And we kind of explained that already, but that's so important. Focus on those readers that love you. Pour your energy, your emotional energy, and your time into them, and not these folks who you're never going to win over.
This episode of Novel Marketing has been brought to you by My Book Table. And if you want to see My Book Table in actual practice online, you can actually see it for my book, Courtship in Crisis. If you go to courtshipandcrisis.com, I set up that domain to redirect to my Book Table page on thomasumstattd.com. So you don't have to know how to spell Thomas Umstattd. Just go to courtshipandcrisis.com, and you can see what a My Book Table page looks like. You can get My Book Table for free at mybooktable.com, and if you want to upgrade to the professional version, you can get 10% off if you use the coupon code NOVELMARKETING on checkout.
And remember, if you share our podcast with a friend, I'm going to dedicate my next 5 novels to you. Well, I don't know about that. Maybe my next 3.
We will deeply appreciate it. How about that?
Will. And if you give us a kind review on iTunes, Thomas promises to run through the center of Austin in spandex while singing the Star Spangled Banner.
No, I do not. No. Who wrote this script? No, but if you leave a review and leave your book title in the review, we may be thanking folks by name and by book title on future episodes. So say who you are and what your title of your book is, and you might hear it on an episode. So, and it doesn't even have to be a positive review. You just have to love us or hate us, either one. That's all we ask.
That's all we ask. And as always, if you have a marketing question you'd like us to tackle, shoot it to us. We'd love that, and we'll answer it in an upcoming episode.
This has been the Novel Marketing Podcast, giving you novel ideas on how to promote yourself and your writing offline, online, and everywhere in between.